Chapter 1. The Letter from the Dead. It was late autumn in Mill Creek, Pennsylvania, when Elaine Carter's world quietly began to fracture. The evening air carried the bitter scent of leaves and distant wood smoke, reminding Elaine of simpler times, when evenings meant family dinners and late-night chats with her husband Tom over glasses of Merlot. Those memories, once sweet, now stung like acid. Tom Carter had died 3 months ago. A sudden heart attack, they said, something Elaine had struggled to accept, given Tom's near obsession with healthy living. But now, grief had settled into an uneasy routine, days and nights filled with a mechanical rhythm to keep the children feeling normal. Elaine had spent the afternoon shuttling her kids around town. 17-year-old Julia attended drama rehearsals at the high school, and Kevin, 14, had football practice at the community field. As they drove home, the mood was predictably tense. Julia, her eyes glued to her phone, muttered something vague about dinner. Kevin was silent, headphones sealing him off from the world. Elaine tightened her grip on the steering wheel, the silence heavy around her. They arrived home as twilight spread across their suburban neighborhood. A neat stack of mail sat waiting in the entryway, where Julia had carelessly tossed it. Elaine sifted through envelopes, utility bills, insurance reminders, credit card offers, routine pieces of an ordinary life. Then she saw it, the letter that shattered everything. It was a thick, formal-looking envelope from a law firm called Galloway & Pierce, attorneys at law, based in Scranton, a city Elaine rarely had reason to visit. The envelope felt weighty, official. It was addressed specifically to her, Elaine Carter, in bold, sharp letters. The return address gave nothing away except a lingering sense of dread. Elaine moved into the kitchen, set the envelope carefully on the counter, and stared at it, pulse quickening inexplicably. She took a breath, picked up a kitchen knife, sliced the envelope open, and pulled out the folded documents inside. Her heartbeat echoed in her ears as she read, "Dear Mrs. Carter, as legal representatives of your late husband, Thomas A. Carter, we hereby inform you of the discovery of an additional legal document, his last will and testament, dated exactly 1 year prior to his death. As per this will, we are required to notify you and invite you to our office at your earliest convenience for clarification of significant changes concerning the distribution of Mr. Carter's assets and insurance policy, especially concerning the interests of a dependent minor named Rebecca Palmer, age 10, guardian unspecified." Elaine's breath stopped, her vision narrowed, words blurring. Rebecca Palmer, a dependent minor? She flipped through the pages frantically, searching for an explanation. There were unfamiliar addresses, financial terms, clauses she couldn't immediately process. Her hands trembled so badly she dropped the documents onto the kitchen counter. "Mom?" Julia's voice, distant but sharp, broke through Elaine's shock. She turned to find Julia standing in the doorway, suspicious eyes fixed on the scattered papers. "Everything okay?" Elaine forced a smile, folding the papers quickly back into the envelope. "Just bills. Go wash up for dinner." Julia hesitated, then shrugged and disappeared upstairs. The room swayed slightly as Elaine sank onto a stool. Her mind raced. Tom had spent a considerable amount of time in Scranton last year, always citing business trips, hospital conferences, administrative meetings. But Elaine never questioned him deeply. Trust had blinded her. Now, trust felt like foolishness. Flashbacks pierced her memory. Tom's evasive answers about those trips, the late-night phone calls he stepped out of the room to take, the shadowy exhaustion on his face upon returning home. Elaine's throat tightened with bitter realization. Her husband, whom she'd loved for 20 years, father of her children, had kept secrets she couldn't yet fully understand. Suddenly, her phone vibrated loudly against the granite countertop, jolting her from despair. The screen displayed "private number." She hesitated but answered with trembling fingers. A woman's voice spoke urgently, barely above a whisper. "Listen carefully, Mrs. Carter. Do not contact the lawyers. Do not ask questions. Tom's death was not an accident. Leave it alone or you and your children will suffer. Forget the name Rebecca Palmer." The line clicked dead. Elaine stood frozen, heart thundering. In that instant, Elaine realized her grief was not her greatest burden. It was ignorance. The safe suburban bubble had burst, leaving behind only shards of an illusion she once called a life. Later that night, after Julia and Kevin were safely asleep, Elaine crept downstairs to Tom's old study. The room had remained untouched since his death, a shrine to memories she now questioned. But as she reached for the door handle, she froze. Muddy footprints marked the carpet, leading straight from the unlocked patio door to the desk where Tom once sat for hours, hunched over documents she'd never seen. Elaine turned slowly, scanning the shadows, panic tightening around her throat. Someone had been here tonight. Someone who knew exactly what they were looking for. Elaine opened the desk drawer, empty except for a single photograph, Tom holding a young girl's hand, smiling. On the back, the words, "My Second Family." Chapter 2. Family Fractures. Elaine's heart beat uncontrollably as she stared at the photograph shaking in her hand. The smiling girl next to Tom, his protective hand on her shoulder, shattered every image Elaine had carefully built around her husband's memory. The words, scrawled casually in Tom's familiar handwriting, echoed relentlessly in her mind. My second family. Elaine closed her eyes, fighting nausea. Who was this child? What else had Tom hidden? Her pulse quickened as footsteps creaked on the stairs. Elaine quickly slipped the photo into her pocket just as Kevin appeared, bleary-eyed and confused in the doorway. "Mom?" he mumbled, rubbing his eyes. "What are you doing here?" "Nothing, honey," Elaine said softly, forcing her voice steady. "Go back to bed." Kevin lingered, suspicion faintly visible on his sleepy face before turning slowly and heading back upstairs. Alone again, Elaine sank into Tom's worn leather chair, breathing deeply to steady herself. She scanned the desk drawers frantically, her hands shaking. Empty folders, receipts for trivial expenses, nothing of substance. The room suddenly felt oppressive, the walls closing in. Elaine abruptly stood, moved to the patio door, and double-checked the lock. Whoever had been inside had left no clues except footprints and that photograph. Elaine returned to her bedroom, sleep impossible. She lay awake until dawn, anxiety tightening around her chest like a vice. At breakfast, Julia eyed her mother suspiciously across the kitchen island, noticing Elaine's sleepless eyes and pale complexion. "You okay, Mom?" Julia asked quietly. Her voice was gentle but probing, too mature for her age. Elaine forced another fake smile. "Just didn't sleep well, that's all." Kevin, eyes glued to his cereal, didn't look up. Elaine saw him furtively glance at her from beneath lowered lashes, avoiding direct eye contact. She felt a pang of guilt. Had he noticed more than he admitted? After the kids left for school, Elaine paced restlessly around the empty house. The silence felt unnatural, heavy. She couldn't shake the feeling of eyes watching her, unseen but omnipresent. The photo burned in her pocket, begging for answers she couldn't provide alone. Elaine finally dialed Tom's brother again, heart racing. "Jim," she demanded firmly, "we need to talk, now." They met an hour later at a quiet diner near the edge of town. Jim, tall and broad-shouldered, shared Tom's features, but with none of the warmth. He stirred his coffee slowly, avoiding her gaze. "Did you know about Tom's secret family, Jim?" Elaine asked sharply, leaning across the table, voice low but furious. Jim's hand froze mid-stir. He looked up slowly, his face tense. "What exactly do you know, Elaine?" She placed the photograph on the table between them. Jim paled visibly, jaw tightening. He took a breath, choosing his words carefully. "I told him it was madness, but Tom, he was trying to protect you." "Protect me?" Elaine's voice cracked. "He betrayed me. He had another child, another life." "It's not that simple," Jim snapped, lowering his voice as a waitress glanced their way. "Tom made mistakes, yes, but he was caught up in something bigger. He said if anyone found out, it would put you and the kids in danger." "Who?" Elaine pressed, desperate for clarity. "Who threatened us?" Jim shook his head. "I honestly don't know. But Tom was scared, really scared, Elaine." Back home, Elaine collapsed on her couch, drained and confused. The house, once comforting, now felt alien. Betrayal seeped into every corner, every memory now tainted by suspicion. That afternoon, her phone rang again. The caller ID read, "Private number." Elaine hesitated but answered, heart pounding. A chilling voice whispered, controlled yet menacing. "You were warned, Elaine. Yet here you are, asking questions again. Now you'll suffer the consequences." Elaine's blood ran cold. "Who are you? Why are you doing this?" "You'll know soon enough," the voice replied calmly. "Stop digging, or we'll bury you next to Tom." The line clicked dead. In the evening, Elaine stood at the sink, washing dishes mechanically, staring numbly out into the dimly lit yard. Kevin entered quietly, standing uncertainly in the doorway behind her. "Mom?" His voice trembled slightly. "Was Dad a good person?" Elaine froze. The question cut deeper than any threat or accusation. She turned slowly, seeing Kevin's earnest, wounded eyes. "Your father," she hesitated, throat tightening. "He loved you both. Sometimes people make mistakes." Kevin nodded slowly, unsatisfied, retreating silently upstairs. That night, Elaine sat alone, consumed by anguish and uncertainty. The darkness of their home felt suffocating, each shadow seeming to hide unknown threats. Just before midnight, headlights flashed briefly through her curtains. Someone parked across the street, watching her house. A cold dread filled her chest. She edged quietly to the window, peeking through the blinds. An unfamiliar black SUV idled quietly, headlights off. Elaine's pulse quickened. Someone inside was staring directly at her house. Minutes passed like hours until the SUV finally drove away, fading silently into the night. Elaine slumped onto the floor, terror and confusion overwhelming her. What had Tom done, and why was it now haunting them? Elaine woke abruptly at dawn to frantic pounding at her door. Opening it, she found two police officers grim-faced and stern. One held up a search warrant. Chapter 3: Search Warrant. Elaine stood frozen in the doorway as two police officers displayed a folded search warrant, stern expressions etched on their faces. The taller officer, with a steel-gray mustache and tired eyes, introduced himself curtly as Detective Roy Sanders. "Mrs. Carter, we're here concerning your husband's affairs," Sanders stated coldly. "Please step aside." Elaine's throat tightened painfully. "I don't understand. Tom died months ago. What exactly are you looking for?" The second officer, younger and wiry, moved past her into the hallway without reply. Detective Sanders gave her a perfunctory glance. "We received credible information that your husband was involved in serious financial misconduct. We're required to seize any related documents or electronic devices." Elaine's mind spun frantically. Financial misconduct? Tom worked at the hospital for 20 years. He never mentioned. "We rarely discuss our illegal activities at home, do we?" Sanders replied dryly. "Please cooperate, Mrs. Carter. We're just doing our job." Elaine watched helplessly as they methodically searched the living room, flipping through books, emptying cabinets, pulling out drawers. Upstairs, footsteps echoed heavily as more officers entered. Her heart sank further, Julia and Kevin's bedrooms. Suddenly, Kevin appeared at the top of the staircase, eyes wide and frightened. "Mom, what's going on?" Elaine tried to sound reassuring. "Everything's fine, Kev. Just let them do their job." But her words sounded hollow, even to herself. Julia stood next to Kevin, arms folded tightly across her chest, openly defiant as she glared at the officers rummaging through her belongings. Elaine felt a surge of helpless anger seeing her children endure this invasion. "Mom, did Dad really do something wrong?" Julia demanded loudly. Elaine's voice trembled. "No, sweetheart, your father didn't." Detective Sanders interrupted sharply. "Mrs. Carter, please don't discuss details of the investigation with anyone, including your children." Elaine felt a burning shame. Her home, her sanctuary, was being turned upside down by strangers accusing her dead husband of crimes she couldn't even comprehend. Hours later, the officers left carrying boxes filled with Tom's laptop, financial records, and files Elaine barely recognized. Detective Sanders handed Elaine a receipt, voice flat. "We'll contact you when our investigation is complete. Don't leave town." As soon as the front door closed, Elaine collapsed onto the couch, head in her hands, tears spilling uncontrollably. Julia sat silently beside her, quietly supportive. Kevin watched them both from the doorway, eyes guarded. "Mom," Julia said softly, after a long silence, "we deserve to know the truth." Elaine lifted her eyes, red and exhausted. She knew Julia was right. That evening, as the house settled into an uneasy quiet, Elaine received another anonymous call. "Did you enjoy your visit from Detective Sanders?" The voice was cold, mocking. "If you thought that was painful, imagine how much worse things can get if you don't stop asking questions. Next time, we might not be so gentle." Elaine's voice broke with desperation. "What do you want from me? Please, leave my children out of this." "You're the one dragging them into it," the voice snapped. "The more you dig into Tom's past, the deeper their graves will be. It's your choice." The line disconnected abruptly. Elaine stared at the phone, chest tightening painfully. Determination hardened inside her. No threat would stop her from protecting her family and uncovering the truth. But first, she needed answers about Tom's secret life, and there was only one person left who might know: Rebecca Palmer. The next morning, after dropping the kids off at school, Elaine drove nervously to Scranton, the address from the mysterious will clutched in her trembling hand. She found herself parked in front of an ordinary-looking suburban home, neat but worn around the edges. Taking a shaky breath, she approached and knocked firmly. The door opened slowly, revealing a woman in her early 30s, slender and pale, shadows of exhaustion beneath wary eyes. "Rebecca Palmer?" Elaine asked, hesitantly. "No, I'm Claire Palmer, Rebecca's mother." Her voice was tight, guarded. "Who are you?" "My name is Elaine Carter. My husband was Tom Carter." Elaine's voice trembled slightly. "I believe our families may be connected somehow." Claire Palmer's expression turned instantly defensive. "You shouldn't have come here." "I have no choice," Elaine pleaded. "My family is falling apart. My husband left behind secrets. Your daughter's name is mentioned in his will. Please, I need to understand." Claire hesitated, glancing nervously behind her. Finally, reluctantly, she opened the door wider. "Come in, quickly." Inside, the home was sparsely furnished yet comfortable. Claire closed the door firmly, checking the street through curtains nervously. "What's going on?" Elaine whispered urgently. "Who are you hiding from?" Claire's eyes brimmed with tears. "Tom never told you, did he?" "Rebecca is his daughter, my daughter. We kept it secret for safety reasons. Tom wasn't cheating. He was trying to protect her from people he owed. Dangerous people." Elaine's heart thundered in her chest. "Who are these people?" Claire took a breath, eyes haunted. "The kind who destroy lives to collect debts. They'll never stop until everything he had, everything you have, is theirs." A sudden knock rattled the front door sharply. Claire turned pale, terrified eyes meeting Elaine's. "They found you," Claire whispered desperately. "We need to run, now." The front door burst open violently, revealing Detective Sanders standing alongside two unfamiliar men in dark suits, guns drawn, faces set with cold determination. Chapter 4: Into the Shadows. The door slammed open with a crash, splinters scattering across the entryway as Detective Sanders entered, gun raised, flanked by two severe-looking men in dark suits. Elaine gasped, stumbling backward, her heart hammering wildly. "Hands up! Nobody move!" Sanders barked, eyes scanning the small living room before settling coldly on Elaine. Claire Palmer grabbed Elaine's arm, gripping painfully tight. Her voice trembled as she whispered urgently, "Do exactly as they say. Don't provoke them." Sanders stepped forward slowly, never lowering his weapon, his gaze ice-cold. "Mrs. Carter, Ms. Palmer, step away from each other, slowly." Elaine raised her trembling hands, feeling utterly helpless. "Detective Sanders, please. I haven't done anything wrong. Save it," Sanders interrupted harshly, nodding toward Claire. "We have a warrant for her arrest." Claire's face drained of color. "On what charges?" "Child endangerment," Sanders replied evenly. "Rebecca Palmer is officially missing. You failed to report her absence. Now both of you are suspects." Elaine's breath caught painfully. "Rebecca's missing? I don't even know her." Sanders glanced coldly at Elaine. "Mrs. Carter, your husband kept dangerous company. You're tangled deeper than you realize." One of the men in suits moved forward, gripping Claire's wrists roughly. Claire cried out softly as cold metal cuffs clicked shut around her wrists. She shot Elaine a desperate, pleading glance. "Find Rebecca," Claire whispered urgently, "before they do." Then Claire was dragged roughly from the house, leaving Elaine alone with Sanders and the remaining stranger, whose steely gaze made her shiver. Sanders lowered his gun slightly, stepping closer. "Let me be clear, Mrs. Carter. We know your husband was involved with very dangerous individuals. If you know anything, anything at all, now's the time." Elaine shook her head desperately. "I swear, Detective, I'm just trying to find the truth. I didn't even know Claire existed until today." Sanders regarded her thoughtfully for a moment, eyes narrow with suspicion. "Be careful, Mrs. Carter. These aren't people you want to cross. They won't hesitate to hurt your children." Elaine flinched at his words, her stomach churning with dread. "Then protect us. Please, you have to help us." "We can only help if you cooperate fully," Sanders warned darkly. "Stay home. Don't interfere. Leave the investigating to us." With that, Sanders and the stranger exited abruptly, leaving Elaine standing alone in the empty, silent home, her heart pounding painfully in her chest. She stood frozen for several moments, paralyzed by fear. Rebecca was missing. Her own children were threatened. But Claire's desperate plea echoed persistently. Find Rebecca before they do. Elaine rushed back to her car, panic rising as she drove home through unfamiliar streets, her thoughts a chaotic blur. Who had Tom truly been, and what had he dragged their family into? As soon as Elaine entered her home, she locked every door and window, paranoia tightening around her like a noose. Julia and Kevin returned home shortly afterward, sensing immediately their mother's heightened fear. "Mom, what's going on?" Julia demanded, her voice sharp and worried. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Elaine hesitated briefly, then decided honesty was the only path forward. "Rebecca Palmer is missing, Tom had another daughter, and now people are threatening our family." Kevin paled visibly, sinking into a chair. Julia stared incredulously, disbelief warring with anger in her eyes. "What else was Dad hiding?" Julia demanded bitterly. "How many lies did he tell?" Elaine's heart twisted painfully at her daughter's anguish. "Julia, your father wasn't perfect, but we have to focus now on keeping each other safe." "How?" Kevin asked quietly, voice shaking slightly. "How do we stay safe?" Elaine hugged her children tightly, desperately trying to convey reassurance she didn't feel. "We'll find a way." That night, Elaine lay awake, staring anxiously at the ceiling. Her mind raced endlessly, questions multiplying without answers. She felt trapped, hunted, unsure of who to trust. Just after midnight, a sudden, sharp noise shattered the silence downstairs. Elaine sat up instantly, her pulse hammering frantically. Footsteps creaked softly below. Someone was inside. She moved quietly from bed, gripping a heavy brass candlestick tightly as a makeshift weapon. She crept slowly down the dark staircase, breath shallow, heart pounding. In the dim moonlight flooding the living room, Elaine froze. A figure stood silently near Tom's desk, searching quietly through drawers. Elaine gripped the candlestick tighter, voice shaking with forced bravery. "Who are you? What do you want?" The figure slowly turned, face obscured by darkness. A cold, familiar voice sent chills down Elaine's spine. "Hello, Elaine." Stepping into the moonlight was Jim, Tom's brother. His expression was calm yet chilling, eyes empty of warmth. Elaine's heart sank with dread. "Jim, what are you doing here?" "I warned Tom to keep you out of this," Jim replied coldly, voice eerily steady. "But you just couldn't leave it alone. What are you talking about?" Elaine's voice trembled desperately. "Tom owed dangerous people, Elaine. People I introduced him to," Jim admitted calmly, expression hardening. "They don't forgive debts, and they certainly don't forgive betrayal. You should have stayed blind. Now it's too late." Elaine backed away slowly, heart racing, panic surging through her veins. "Please, Jim, don't do this. Think of Julia and Kevin." "I am thinking of them," Jim replied bitterly. "You've left me no choice." He reached toward her suddenly, eyes blazing with determined malice. A sudden, deafening crash shattered the tense standoff, glass exploding inward as someone hurled a heavy brick through the living room window, landing with a heavy thud between Elaine and Jim. Attached to the brick was a crudely scrawled note: "Stop digging or your children are next." Chapter 5, No Safe Place. Elaine stared in shock at the shattered glass scattered across her living room floor. The brick, crude and menacing, lay inches from her trembling feet. The note attached, handwritten in large, ugly letters, felt like a knife driven straight into her heart. "Stop digging or your children are next." Jim stood motionless, face pale and eyes wide with sudden realization. "Elaine, I didn't expect this," he whispered, voice shaking. "What did you expect?" Elaine snapped, anger surging through her fear. "You brought these people into our lives." Jim stepped back slowly, raising his hands defensively. "Elaine, please listen. These people, they're relentless. Tom was desperate, and I introduced him, but I swear I never imagined it would escalate like this." Elaine's voice cracked sharply, filled with fury and desperation. "Who are they, Jim? Tell me who these people are." He hesitated, eyes darting toward the broken window nervously. "They call themselves the Resolution Group. They offer quick cash for struggling businesses, but the interest, it's crippling. Tom thought he could manage, but the debt spiraled. When he tried to back out, they threatened Rebecca and Claire. He panicked, set up that secret will for protection." Elaine felt her knees weaken, the weight of betrayal suffocating. "Why didn't he tell me?" Jim sighed heavily, shaking his head. "He wanted to protect you, shield you and the kids from this mess. He never imagined it would come to threats and violence." Elaine swallowed hard, trying to steady her breathing. So, what now, Jim? What can we do? You need to leave town immediately, Jim said firmly, eyes pleading. Take Julia and Kevin. Go somewhere safe, somewhere these people can't find you. Run? Elaine asked bitterly. And live looking over my shoulder forever? If you stay, Jim warned gravely, you might not have a forever. Elaine's jaw tightened. I won't run, not until I find Rebecca. That child deserves better than this. Jim's shoulders slumped in resignation. Then at least get Julia and Kevin somewhere safe. Tonight. Elaine nodded slowly, determination battling her fear. Fine, but you're helping me find Rebecca. Jim hesitated, then finally nodded. Agreed. Elaine quickly went upstairs and woke Julia and Kevin, urgently explaining they needed to stay at their grandmother's house in Erie for a few days. Julia protested fiercely at first, but eventually yielded under Elaine's firm insistence. Kevin, silent and frightened, simply followed. The drive to Erie felt surreal, the night roads endless and oppressive. Elaine left her children at her mother's house, hugging them desperately before returning to Mill Creek. The empty drive home filled her with dread, each mile deepening her anxiety. Back home, Elaine sat with Jim, sorting through Tom's papers, desperately seeking clues. They found cryptic references to payments, addresses in different states, and a single name repeatedly appearing, Carmichael. Elaine felt her blood run cold. Who's Carmichael? She whispered, scanning the name again and again. Jim's face paled. Oliver Carmichael runs the Resolution Group. Ruthless, powerful. If he's involved directly, it's worse than I thought. Just then, Elaine's phone buzzed with an incoming message from an unknown number. Her hands trembled as she opened it. A photo appeared, Rebecca, frightened eyes wide, holding today's newspaper. Below it, a chilling demand. Come alone to the old foundry on County Road 18. Midnight. If you bring anyone, she dies. Elaine's heart stopped. Oh my God, they have Rebecca. Jim's voice shook with horror. Elaine, it's a trap. You can't go. I have no choice, Elaine whispered, tears filling her eyes. If it were Julia or Kevin, wouldn't you? He looked away, unable to argue. I'll go with you. Stay hidden outside, just in case. Elaine nodded silently, understanding his intention. The hours passed in dreadful anticipation. As midnight approached, they drove in silence toward the abandoned foundry, a dilapidated shadow looming ominously under the moonlight. Jim parked at a safe distance, hiding their car behind overgrown bushes. Elaine walked the final stretch alone, heart pounding painfully in her chest. The foundry doors stood slightly ajar. Taking a shaky breath, Elaine stepped inside cautiously, darkness swallowing her instantly. A single lamp illuminated the center floor, where Rebecca sat trembling, hands tied, eyes wide with fear. Rebecca, Elaine called softly, stepping forward. I'm here to help you. Rebecca shook her head frantically, voice muffled beneath her tears. No, it's a trap. A figure stepped silently from the shadows behind Elaine, a cold voice cutting through the silence. Hello again, Mrs. Carter. Elaine spun, terror gripping her heart. Standing calmly, gun drawn and face devoid of compassion, stood Detective Roy Sanders. Elaine's voice cracked with desperation. You're part of this. You're supposed to help us. Sanders smiled coldly. You shouldn't have kept digging, Elaine. Now you and Rebecca pay the price. Sanders raised the gun slowly, aiming directly at Elaine's chest. Just as his finger tightened on the trigger, a sudden, loud gunshot echoed sharply through the darkness, and Sanders staggered back, collapsing heavily to the ground. Chapter 6. Trapped in Darkness. The echo of the gunshot faded into silence, and Elaine stood frozen, heart pounding wildly. Detective Sanders lay motionless on the grimy factory floor, eyes wide in shock as blood pooled beneath him. A figure stepped out from the shadows. Jim, hands trembling, a pistol shaking in his grip. Elaine, are you all right? He asked desperately, his voice raw and panicked. She nodded numbly, her gaze locked onto Sanders' lifeless body. Jim, you shot him. I had no choice, Jim whispered hoarsely, staring blankly at the gun in his hand. He would have killed you both. Elaine shook herself from the shock and rushed to Rebecca, quickly untying her trembling hands. The girl clung to Elaine, shaking violently and sobbing quietly. Are you hurt? Elaine asked softly, stroking the girl's hair reassuringly. Rebecca shook her head, eyes wide with lingering terror. He said he'd hurt Mom if I didn't stay quiet. You're safe now, Elaine assured gently, fighting to steady her own trembling voice. We need to leave, now, Jim urged sharply, glancing around the darkened factory. They'll know something's wrong when Sanders doesn't report back. Elaine lifted Rebecca carefully, and the three hurried outside. Jim's car waited hidden nearby. They drove rapidly, leaving the abandoned factory and Sanders's corpse far behind. But Elaine knew safety was only an illusion now. Back at Elaine's home, Jim paced anxiously, hands shaking. Elaine wrapped Rebecca in a blanket, the girl huddled silently on the couch, eyes hollow from trauma. Elaine's mind raced. What now? Their situation had escalated from threats to murder in a single horrifying moment. Jim, we need to go to the police, Elaine said finally, voice firm despite her fear. We can't keep running. Jim shook his head vehemently. Elaine, Sanders was the police. Carmichael's men are everywhere. If we go public, we're dead. Your children are dead. Elaine felt a crushing weight of despair. So we do nothing? No, Jim replied softly, eyes darkening with grim resolve. We end this. How? Elaine demanded desperately. They control everything. Jim hesitated, visibly struggling with inner turmoil. Finally, he reached into his pocket, pulling out a USB flash drive, holding it out to Elaine. Tom gave me this shortly before he died. He said if anything happened, I needed to protect you. What's on it? Elaine asked urgently, taking the drive with trembling fingers. Proof, Jim whispered fiercely. Detailed records of every illegal transaction between Tom Carmichael and the Resolution Group. Everything Sanders tried to bury. Elaine's breath caught sharply. Why didn't you show me sooner? I thought I could protect you by keeping you blind, Jim admitted bitterly. I was wrong. Elaine plugged the drive into her laptop, quickly scanning files. Her heart raced faster as she scrolled through names, addresses, dates, financial records, all meticulously documented. It was irrefutable evidence linking Carmichael to bribery, blackmail, extortion, even murder. She knew instantly this was their only leverage. We take this to the FBI, Elaine decided decisively. Tonight. Jim nodded grimly, accepting their desperate gamble. But before they could move, Elaine's phone vibrated violently on the table. She answered, dread pooling heavily in her stomach. You've made a very big mistake, a chilling voice spoke calmly. Oliver Carmichael himself. Now your children will pay. Elaine's blood froze. No, leave them alone, please. You brought this upon yourself, Carmichael warned coldly. Meet me personally, bring the USB, or your children won't see morning, understood? Elaine's voice shook. Where? The docks, Warehouse 23, alone, or they die. The call disconnected abruptly. Elaine stood paralyzed, agony gripping her heart. Jim's face paled visibly. Elaine, it's suicide. I don't have a choice, Elaine whispered brokenly, gathering every ounce of strength. My children's lives depend on me. Elaine placed the USB into her pocket, determination stealing her resolve. Jim reluctantly agreed to stay hidden nearby, promising to intervene if needed. Driving through the darkness toward the docks felt surreal. Each shadow deepened her dread. Warehouse 23 loomed ahead, a grim, abandoned building surrounded by silence and shadows. Elaine parked and stepped cautiously inside, her heart pounding painfully. In the dim light, she saw a chair where Julia sat tied, gagged, and terrified. Kevin stood nearby, held roughly by two armed guards. Carmichael emerged from the shadows, impeccably dressed, eyes coldly calculating. Welcome, Mrs. Carter. Do you have the drive? Elaine held it up, trembling visibly. Release my children, please. They're innocent. No one is innocent, Carmichael replied coolly, especially not you. She moved forward slowly, holding the drive tightly. Carmichael reached out, taking it carefully, a chilling smile crossing his face. Thank you, he murmured softly, signaling to his men. They began dragging Julia and Kevin toward an open van outside. Wait, you said, Elaine shouted desperately. I said bring the drive, Carmichael interrupted cruelly. I promised nothing else. Elaine lunged forward, panicked, but strong hands gripped her roughly from behind, restraining her. Let them go, she screamed, fighting hopelessly against iron grips. Carmichael leaned closer, whispering coldly, You've seen too much. Now it ends. A loud crash echoed from the entrance. Elaine saw Jim burst inside, pistol raised desperately. Carmichael's men reacted instantly, guns drawn. "Run, Elaine!" Jim screamed, firing wildly, chaos erupting around them. Elaine twisted free, stumbling toward her children. Gunfire exploded through the darkness, screams and shouts ringing in her ears. Amid the chaos, Elaine reached Julia and Kevin, shielding them desperately. Suddenly, a searing pain tore through her side. She'd been shot. Her knees buckled, vision blurring as she collapsed to the cold, concrete floor. Chapter 7. Between Life and Death. Elaine's vision blurred, darkness creeping at the edges of her sight as the searing pain tore through her side. She hit the cold warehouse floor, gasping sharply, her hands instinctively clutching the spreading warmth of her own blood. "Mom!" Julia screamed, her voice distant and filled with horror. Gunshots echoed around her, a chaotic symphony of violence punctuated by desperate shouts. Elaine's strength ebbed rapidly, every breath becoming a battle. Her thoughts were sluggish, panic entwined with a heartbreaking clarity. She was dying, and her children were still in danger. Through fading consciousness, she glimpsed Jim frantically pulling Julia and Kevin away from the chaos, shielding them with his body. His desperate voice barely reached her, yelling for them to run. "Get to the car!" Jim screamed, gun raised defiantly against Carmichael's advancing men. "Now!" The metallic taste of blood filled Elaine's mouth. Her heart ached unbearably, torn between relief that her children were escaping and despair at leaving them. As shadows closed in around her, a powerful hand gripped her arm roughly, yanking her upward. "You're not dying yet," Carmichael hissed coldly into her ear, dragging her roughly toward a waiting van. "We still need you alive." Elaine groaned weakly, consciousness flickering in and out as Carmichael's men shoved her inside. Doors slammed shut, the van jerking violently into motion. Every bump sent agonizing waves through her body. She fought desperately against unconsciousness, trying to focus on her surroundings. Two armed men sat opposite, watching impassively. Carmichael, calm and unaffected by the chaos he created, spoke softly into a phone. "Sanders is dead, the Carter woman is wounded but alive. We still control the narrative, clean it up." Elaine shivered at his ruthless tone. She understood clearly, no one who knew the truth was safe. Eventually, the van stopped sharply, throwing Elaine painfully against the metal walls. Rough hands dragged her out into an unfamiliar, dimly lit basement. She slumped heavily into a chair, breath shallow, pulse weak. Carmichael loomed over her, expression unreadable. "You've caused me considerable inconvenience, Elaine. Let my children go," she rasped weakly. "Your children?" Carmichael mocked softly. "They're already beyond your protection. You should worry about yourself now." Elaine closed her eyes, tears leaking silently down her bruised cheeks. "Why are you doing this?" He knelt beside her, voice chillingly gentle. "Your husband tried to betray us. He had a conscience, an unfortunate flaw in this business. We protect our interests fiercely." "Interests?" Elaine echoed bitterly, fighting for strength. "You destroy lives for profit." "Precisely," Carmichael replied calmly. "Profit is power. Tom underestimated that." Elaine's voice cracked, fury flaring amidst her pain. "You won't get away with this." He laughed softly, standing again. "I already have." He stepped back, signaling the guards. "Keep her alive." Barely. She might still be useful. Elaine was left alone, bound to the chair, consciousness drifting again. Time passed, agony and despair mingling until the door creaked open cautiously. A quiet whisper pierced her haze. "Elaine." She lifted her head painfully, seeing Claire Palmer in the shadows, face pale and frightened, clutching keys tightly and shaking hands. "Claire." "How?" Elaine breathed weakly. "I managed to escape," Claire whispered urgently, hurrying to free Elaine's hands. "Rebecca told me everything. Jim got your kids safely away, but Carmichael's hunting them now. We have to hurry." Elaine's mind sharpened instantly, desperation surging through her weakened body. "My children, they're still alive?" "For now," Claire confirmed grimly. "Jim hid them, but Carmichael won't stop." With Claire's help, Elaine stumbled painfully through darkened corridors, each step agonizing. They reached a small side door opening silently onto a moonlit alley. A car waited anxiously, Rebecca waving frantically from inside. Elaine collapsed gratefully into the seat, barely conscious as Claire accelerated away into the night. They drove swiftly, tension thick and suffocating. Finally, in a quiet motel room on the outskirts of town, Elaine rested weakly on a narrow bed. Claire bandaged her wound carefully, worry etched deeply into her exhausted features. "We can't stay here long," Claire warned quietly. "They'll track us eventually." Elaine squeezed Claire's hand weakly. "Where are Julia and Kevin?" "Jim took them somewhere safe," Claire assured gently. "He refused to tell me exactly. Said the less anyone knew, the safer they'd be." Elaine closed her eyes, relief mingled with lingering fear. Her family was scattered, hunted relentlessly, but alive. Barely. A knock suddenly echoed softly at the motel door, sharp and insistent. Elaine's breath caught sharply, heart racing painfully. Claire moved cautiously, gripping a small pistol protectively. "Who's there?" Claire demanded quietly through the door, voice tense. A familiar voice replied softly yet urgently. "It's Jim. Please, let me in." Claire hesitated briefly, then opened the door cautiously. Jim stepped inside quickly, closing and locking it securely behind him. His expression was strained, eyes deeply shadowed with exhaustion. "Jim, my children," Elaine pleaded hoarsely, struggling to sit up. "Are they safe?" "They are, Elaine," Jim assured her firmly, kneeling beside her. "Hidden well. But Carmichael is furious, sending people everywhere. We can't run forever." Elaine's heart sank heavily, despair crushing her remaining hope. "Then it's hopeless." Jim shook his head sharply. "No. There's one last play, one final chance to stop Carmichael." Elaine stared desperately into Jim's determined eyes. "Tell me." He took a deep breath, voice filled with grim resolve. "We go public, the media, the FBI, every document, every proof we have. Carmichael can hide from individuals, but he can't hide from the world." Elaine's pulse quickened painfully. "It's suicide, Jim." He nodded slowly, eyes dark with understanding. "But it's our only hope. It ends now, one way or another." Before Elaine could reply, the motel window exploded inward in a hail of glass and noise. Masked figures stormed into the small room, guns raised and shouting orders. Carmichael's men had found them again. Chapter 8, Reckoning. Glass shattered inward, spraying the motel room with glittering shards as masked men burst inside, guns drawn, shouting aggressively. Elaine instinctively shielded her face, heart exploding with fear. Claire screamed, clutching Rebecca protectively. Jim raised his pistol, but it was knocked violently from his hand as a heavy blow sent him sprawling to the floor. "On your knees," barked a masked figure, forcing Jim roughly down. Elaine's blood ran cold as Oliver Carmichael stepped casually into the chaos, calm amidst the turmoil, eyes burning with quiet fury. "You're remarkably stubborn, Elaine," Carmichael remarked coldly, moving slowly toward her. "A trait shared by your late husband, admirable, but ultimately foolish." Elaine stood defiantly despite her weakened body. "You've taken everything from me. What else do you want?" Carmichael smiled bitterly. "Your silence, permanent if necessary." He gestured sharply, and his men swiftly restrained Claire, Rebecca, and Jim. Elaine's heart sank. All seemed lost. Carmichael leaned in close, voice low and menacing. "You could have saved your family, but now you'll watch them suffer." "No!" Elaine cried, desperation and rage boiling within her. "They've done nothing." "They're your weakness," Carmichael said coldly, "and you've become mine." He motioned his men forward, but before they could move, bright headlights suddenly flooded the motel room, harsh beams cutting sharply through broken windows. Car doors slammed loudly outside, followed by urgent voices shouting clearly, "FBI, drop your weapons and surrender immediately." Chaos erupted instantly. Carmichael's men panicked, attempting to flee, but agents swiftly filled the room, weapons drawn, commands shouted forcefully. Gunshots cracked through the air, brief but deafening. Elaine threw herself protectively over Rebecca as screams and shouts echoed around her. Within moments, Carmichael and his men lay subdued, wrists restrained, faces pressed against the gritty motel floor. An FBI agent approached Elaine gently, helping her to her feet. "Mrs. Carter, we received your files," he said calmly. "Jim got them to us just in time. You're safe now." Elaine's vision blurred with tears of relief and disbelief. "My children? Are they?" The agent nodded reassuringly. "Julia and Kevin are safe. Agents are with them now. You did the right thing." Elaine collapsed into grateful sobs, holding Rebecca tightly. Claire joined them, embracing both fiercely as Jim struggled to his feet, bruised but alive. Hours later, safe in a quiet FBI field office, Elaine reunited tearfully with Julia and Kevin, holding them close. The nightmare that had consumed their lives finally lifted, leaving profound scars but unbreakable bonds. The investigation moved swiftly. Carmichael and his associates faced a mountain of charges: murder, kidnapping, extortion, bribery. Tom's evidence ensured their fate. Sanders' corruption shook local authorities deeply, forcing reforms. Weeks passed in fragile calm. Elaine slowly healed from her wounds, both physical and emotional, rebuilding her family piece by piece. Rebecca became a frequent guest, gradually integrating into their fractured yet resilient household. Claire, forever changed by trauma, became a steadfast ally and friend. One quiet evening, Elaine visited Tom's grave alone, the sunset painting gentle colors across the sky. She knelt quietly, placing fresh flowers before the headstone bearing his name. "You tried to protect us," she whispered softly, tears falling freely. "I wish you'd trusted me sooner." She rose slowly, feeling a profound peace amid lingering grief. She understood now. Life was never simple, people never wholly good or evil. They made mistakes, but they loved fiercely, fought bravely, protected desperately. Returning home, Elaine found Julia and Kevin, laughing softly together, Rebecca joining shyly. The sound filled Elaine's heart, a warm promise of healing and hope. Jim stood quietly nearby, his presence a constant reassurance. "Mom?" Julia asked softly, eyes thoughtful. "Will things ever feel normal again?" Elaine smiled gently, squeezing Julia's hand reassuringly. "Maybe not the same normal, but we'll build something stronger." That night, Elaine stood alone on the porch, stars glittering above like silent sentinels. Life would never erase the pain, but it had shown her strength she never imagined. Tom's secrets had shattered their world, but from those broken pieces, she had forged something new, resilient and beautiful. She whispered softly into the night air, a quiet promise to herself and the memory of her husband. "We're going to be okay."